Welcome back to another Sensei series. Today I want to talk about a subject that every guitarist, musician, artist, you name it, deals with: self-doubt. I've got a number of points on this subject, and if you'd like to skip around, I've got links down there in the description box for you. Alright, first of all, you gotta know that everybody deals with this. I deal with it, Jimi Hendrix dealt with it, Brian Wilson spent an extended period of time lying in bed trying to deal with it, which is not what I would recommend. I've always found it slightly comforting knowing that this isn't something that's unique to me. You are not alone when you have those feelings of musical insecurity. The greatest musicians in the world dealt with it and still made great art, and you can overcome it as well. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be an entirely negative thing. You can use self-doubt as self-analysis. For me, I'm constantly wondering, is this good enough? Can it be better? And I think that's healthy. Of course, it can be hard to see our own art from an outside perspective. I would recommend that you seek out critiques from people that you trust. I've been fortunate enough to have had some of these mentors throughout my life. These are people who I know only want to see me succeed, and they'll be the first to point out my musical shortcomings in a constructive way. This objective perspective allows us to get out of our own heads, allowing us to see what areas we need to improve and what areas we're doing pretty well in. Self-doubt can stem from not living up to our own standards, but also not having the tools to know why we don't. Learning to self-analyze and getting critiques from others takes out that mystery. Because if I write a song and I'm not happy with it, if I can figure out why, I can work on improving it, instead of thinking that I suck as a songwriter and getting depressed. Which leads me into the idea of hard work. I've made a video on this subject before, but the majority of musicians are not born with some mystical gift. They're normal people like you and me. While child prodigies and people with perfect pitch do exist, those things are not crucial by any means to success. I personally did not grow up in a musical environment, and I never really had a real natural knack for it. I just practiced a lot. When you're doubting yourself, you need to remember that the thing that separates you from the musicians that you look up to is time and effort. Of course, sometimes you do need to just embrace your limitations. There are some physical ailments that are simply insurmountable, but you can use those things to define your unique style. Case in point, Django Reinhardt. The guy who basically wrote the book on gypsy jazz guitar had 2 working fingers on his left hand. When he lost the use of his other fingers in a fire, he didn't quit guitar. He altered his style, creating something very unique and very cool. Let's look at a more practical example. Say you have short, stubby little fingers like I do. When I'm soloing, I might be slightly limited by my technical abilities, but I'm going to try to make up for that by creating great, beautiful melodies. If you can't change something, then you're going to have to embrace it. And here's the thing, nobody can express your musical voice like you can. At a certain point in musicianship, you develop a voice that is entirely unique to you. I consider it mastery when you've created a seamless connection between what you hear in your head and what comes out of your guitar. Every one of us is going to have a different voice, and one is not necessarily better than the other. Neil Young and Pat Metheny are very different guitarists, and some might consider Metheny the better guitar player, but I wouldn't agree. They both express themselves very, very differently through music. It's like apples and oranges, and both are delicious. This helps me because when I'm listening to Pat Metheny, I'm not thinking, oh wow, look what he can do, I'll never be able to do that, I'm terrible. No, I just accept that his voice is simply different than mine. Now let's say for example I play jazz and I do aspire to be like Pat Metheny. Well, instead of thinking, oh wow, look what he can do, I'll never be able to do that, I'm so terrible, think to yourself, oh wow, listen to that amazing thing he just played. I'm gonna figure that out and infuse that into my own sound. On to my next point. It's impossible to know everything. So many times in my musical journey have I thought, if I can just figure out this one thing, I'll finally be happy with myself as a guitarist. Only to find out that as soon as I've climbed that hill, there's a bigger one waiting for me. See, the journey as a musician is never complete. There is no finish line. The best keep learning their entire lives. And the fact that no single person can learn everything there is to know about music is a thing that can keep it interesting for your entire life. I once had an instructor tell me, man, Samurai, I'm 60 years old, my health isn't great, but every time I pick up the guitar, I feel 18 again. Very inspirational stuff. Don't let the things that you don't know get you down. Let that inspire you. My last point is that comparisons can be healthy. It's important to compare yourself to the right musicians in the right way. For me, it makes absolutely no sense to compare myself to someone who's just picked up the guitar, or someone who plays an entirely different genre. You need to find your peer group and compare yourself among them. Are you finding that all your friends are advancing faster than you? Why is that? Are you practicing less and expecting better results? Or maybe you're advancing faster. You gotta ask yourself, am I developing bad habits and taking shortcuts? That kind of thing. When thinking about the stuff you want to do in a healthy, constructive way, it shouldn't be competitive because music is not a sport. For me, my peer group would be professional guitar players as well as YouTube-based musicians. So I might look at more popular YouTubers and try to figure out what they're doing that I'm not doing. And I'll try to adopt some of those techniques, whether it be how they respond to negative criticism, creative stuff, that kind of thing. Alright, to wrap things up, when you're doubting yourself and getting down about music, always try to remember what made you fall in love with that hunk of wood and 6 metal strings in the first place. Remember that feeling you got when you played your first power chord, your first blues solo, when you finally conquered that passage that took you so much work to get through. You'll feel those highs again, and you'll feel the lows again too. It's all part of the musician's experience. Why don't you leave me a comment letting me know what aspect of music you'd like to work on, so I know you made it this far in the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I make new videos every week, so please hit that subscribe button. I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. Without you guys, these videos would not be possible. And if you'd like to become a patron, I've got a link for you right over there. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.